Hello, ladies. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Old Man Rambles. Um, the spring Steam sale just ended, and as always during these sales, I went looking for games to buy. I have a wish list. I also wind up adding new things to my wish list as games appear, either in early access, which I tend to avoid and just put in my wish list for later, or games which I may not have noticed coming out. Anywho, I did buy a few games, added to my wish list, bought some things off my wish list. But in my looking around at stuff, I came across Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon. Yes, Fall of Avalon. A game which came out about a year or so ago, maybe 2 years. I don't remember the exact release date. You know, intrigued a little bit. Not sure if I'll ever get it. But having come across my feed, algorithms started feeding me things. One of the things that came across is PC Gamer gave this, basically said this game is just another um, um, crap, Elder Scrolls. Another Elden Scroll. It was just an Elder Scrolls wannabe game. And now I did research this game a little bit, thinking I might be interested in getting it later on. And when the game was released, it did have some problems. There were some bugs, but the company that released it addressed the issue. They added patches, they've cleaned everything up, they've worked hard to make this game what it should have been at launch. And they also, I think, just released a new expansion. I think they had a free DLC and then a new expansion to buy, DLC to buy. This game has sold 1 million copies. As of January 2026, this game has sold 1 million copies because the company put in the work. And sales of 1 million doesn't make it a wannabe either. This is a solid game on its own. But according to gaming critics, official gaming publications, this is just an Elder Scrolls wannabe. It's like, whether they've ripped off the formula or not is irrelevant. Did they make a good game? Should be the only really important quantifiable issue. It's like, but no, I think one of the reasons critics are giving it a hard time, something I've mentioned previously, the company that made this is a small indie company of about 50 people from Poland. This is not from a big name studio. And again, the big names in the gaming industry are dismissing this because it's not from a big name studio. No matter how great it is, no matter how great the sales are. I mean, 50 people made this thing and again, had some problems at launch, but they fixed it. I mean, look at Slay the Spire, which came out a couple weeks ago. Slay the Spire 2 came out a couple weeks ago. That's an indie company with literally 10 people working on it. That game broke Steam records for first day concurrent player base. It had hundreds of thousands of people download and play it day one. That's that's not my type of game. I will probably never play it. It doesn't interest me, but that doesn't mean it's not a great game. Just not my style. And was it that game? There was another game I can't. Critics gave a bad review to, despite the fact that any problems in it were addressed. They just didn't play it more than a couple hours. Game's getting great reviews now that people played it more. Sorry, I don't remember the name of the company or the game. But this is an ongoing thing where either big publications that do game reviews or the big game production companies themselves downplay the quality and success of small indie companies. And yet, if you look at the 2025 game reviews, indie companies swept the game reviews. There was only one AAA studio that got anything from the Game Awards. One award for the entire 2025 Game of the Year, Game Awards. Indie developers got everything else. And you look at the company that made Expedition 33. They got Game of the Year, and they're a small indie company. And in their acceptance speech, they basically said the developers, we made a game we thought we would want to play. We made a game that would be fun for us to play. And that's really all it breaks down to. They don't have a team of investors saying it needs to release on time. They don't have market analysts trying to, keep player engagement, and there's no microtransactions in these games. All the games that are doing really, really well these days are, for the most part, are not ones with excessive monetization. Some of them may have some. There's extra skins, there's cosmetics and stuff like that, but they're not the thrust of the game, and they're not constantly hammering it down your throat either. There's not, the minute you log in, there's not some big icon that's saying, hey, buy this new thing in a lot of these games. In spite of the ones that do have, like I said, some cosmetics you can buy, it's something you only encounter when you try and customize something. And even then, it's not thrown into your face. It'll just be like a thing that'll be grayed out that says, you need to buy this skin. But they're not forcing it down your throat. And when I'm looking at my wish list, the games I'm going to be buying in the next year, in 2026, the only games on my wish list that are from big studios, I plan on buying the new Diablo 4 expansion when it comes out at the end of April. And I plan on buying Path of Exile 2, which I think is supposed to release in December of 2026. And that's really one of those companies that it's only a big name studio now because they had a smash hit as an indie studio, and they've simply expanded their team to pour resources into the sequel. From Path of Exile 1 to Path of Exile 2. They're still in the early stages of being a big company. They still have that indie developer feel. I think aside from those two, all the games on my wish list or plan to buy list, with the exception of one other one, are from indie developers. And the one game that's from a big studio that's on my wish list is actually an older game that's been kind of sitting on my wish list for a while that I just haven't bothered to pick up. It wasn't marked down as much as I would have liked in the current Steam sale. I think it was only like 15%. And there were other games I could get that were more costly, that were a better price. So I, price for my wallet. Not that I couldn't afford it. I just tend to, I bought 3 games for like $60. I could have bought this other big studio game, but it would cost another $30. So it's like, I don't need it now. I have enough to keep me busy until the next Steam sale. So I'm all set for that. Plus, I will be spending a huge chunk of change on Diablo 4 in the next few weeks. I did not pre-purchase it. The only reason I'm pretty much done with Blizzard Entertainment. I'm just kind of giving money to Diablo 4 because I've got, I'm already kind of invested in it. I want to find out how the story ends. And I do think the game is fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm just, sick of Blizzard's monetization schemes. A different story. But I've spoken about this a couple of times, about how the gaming industry has kind of become, a members only club where your opinion only counts if you have a certain amount of budget and a certain amount of employees. But these big name studios are laying people off and cutting budgets and killing games and releasing massive flops that are dead within weeks. These $100 million games that are dead on arrival, or fairly shortly after. It gets me, I mean, all these big name studios started out as small independent studios. Going back to the beginning of the industry, Pong. I'm old enough to have played. Remember when Pong was the newest big thing? I played Pong when it was first out in bars and bowling alleys, and when it eventually came to home release. This How amazed I was. That was something made by a handful of people who were working in a computer lab. They were computer programmers who were just goofing off. All the great classic early games, Pong, Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Asteroids, Tetris. These games are all made by 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 people, tops. And they were classic and people loved them. And they were, simple and basic and easy and repetitive. And some of that was because they were new. A lot of it was because they were new. But a lot of those games were still fun to play. I mean, look at the current popularity of roguelike games. Games in which your progress is reset every time you die or you reach a certain point. That's what those original video games were. The difference is that some of these roguelike games have progression where you can maybe get some buffs or benefits or progress with your character. You can, unlock new weapons, increase your stats a little bit to make the run a little easier. But this resurgence in roguelike games is basically a resurgence of that original concept where you just play the game for fun, and when you die, you start over. And all that stuff was done by these small independent people. And now it's just become this good old boys club, where the only people who think their voices matter are the ones with the fat wallets. And I just wonder if the gaming industry, those big name studios who used to be the little guys, I wonder if they're ever going to figure it out. I wonder if they're ever going to learn their lesson. Good hunting.